We are here to talk about Omarr Norman-Lott, the bouncer, and what he will mean for this Kansas City Chiefs defense. Real quick, guys, though, the beginning of this video, there's going to be a little bit of overlap with yesterday's video. That is unfortunate, but it is just the price of talking about two pass rushers in consecutive days here. If you like this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. Now let's get into it. Omarr Norman-Lott was getting a lot of hype leading into the draft by people that I respect, by Brett Coleman, by PFF. I even said a couple times, I think there's a chance Omarr Norman-Lott is one of these guys that sneaks into the background of, or the back end of, the first round of the draft. Let me illustrate first, before we talk about anything else, why that is so impressive. So to be a first rounder, there's basically three boxes you have to check. There's measurables, there's testing numbers, and there's production. To be a real, true first rounder, you got to check all three of those boxes. There are gradations that you can sort of stretch there, like your production. Maybe you were only productive for one season, but with testing, you sure did run a good 40. Those sorts of things can happen. So measurables, what does that mean? You're an offensive tackle, you're 6'6", 325 pounds, and you have 34-inch arms. Those are the measurables. The testing numbers, you're a wide receiver, you ran a 4.41 40-yard dash, and you had a 40-inch vertical. Those are testing numbers. The production, you were a running back and you ran for 1,800 yards your senior season, 1,600 yards your junior season, and 1,100 your sophomore season. Now, all three of those boxes being checked normally means you're probably a first rounder. Two of those three boxes checked means probably you fall to the second round. Maybe you slip to the third round because some guys are gambling on other players. And if you check one of those boxes, you're a day three kind of guy. You didn't do a whole lot in college, and you are running a 5.5 40-yard dash, but golly, you're 6'8", and you've got 39-inch arms. You're going to maybe get your name called at some point, right? Those would be the measurables box being checked, but nothing else. So there's those three boxes. You got to check those three boxes to be a first rounder. How many does Omarr Norman-Lott check? Well, absolutely zero. Absolutely zero of those boxes. So why was Omarr Norman-Lott getting first round hype leading up to the draft? Well, we will talk about that. But let's set the stage for how important Omarr Norman-Lott will be for the Kansas City Chiefs. Here are the 2022 sack numbers for the Kansas City Chiefs. You see the Eagles here led the NFL by 15 sacks. Very impressive. Only to fall a little bit short in 2022. But number 2 in the NFL was the Kansas City Chiefs with 55. 55 sacks for the Chiefs, good for second in the NFL. The Chiefs that year, you might remember, won that what was that game? The Super Bowl. Okay, 2023. The Chiefs were second to the Ravens. 57 sacks. They improved on the 55 from 2022. Went all the way up to 57. Still good for second in the NFL. It was the Ravens who finished first with 60. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. The Ravens had a good season, did not win the Super Bowl. Then you have 2024. The Chiefs' defense was not quite as solid as had it been in 2022 and 2023, where the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Chiefs got to the Super Bowl, didn't win it, you might remember. Where were they in sacks in 2024? 39. They fell all the way to third. This is not first place. This is the 17th place Steelers. The Chiefs were at 19. With technically tied for 18th with 39 sacks. So Not a whole lot of action from the defensive line especially. Not a whole lot of sacks from anyone. Really, George Karlaftis led the team with 8, and only a handful of guys had more than a single sack on the year. Enter the Chiefs' need at defensive tackle. Now, here's one place where I want to defend Brett Veach just a little bit, even though his history here is absolutely abysmal. People keep saying that Brett Veach has failed and failed and failed to find a defensive tackle to put next to Chris Jones. Has he failed to find a defensive tackle to put next to Chris Jones? Indeed, he has. Has he failed and failed and failed? Not really. See, this is the list of defensive tackles that Brett Veach has drafted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's drafted 5 defensive tackles to my count out of 55 picks. Now, Khalil McKenzie, if memory serves me correctly, his career was short-lived because he was converted to offensive guard. I believe. I might be wrong. Derek Nottie contributed. Nothing to be ashamed of with Derek Nottie's career outside of where it was that he was drafted. He was drafted too high, but he's still in the NFL. That was one of Brett Veach's very first draft picks. Colin Saunders still in the NFL. Maybe not all that. He's flashed, right? That's the story with Colin Saunders. He keeps flashing good plays, but has never really put anything together consistently. Keandre Coburn, the mega-sized defensive tackle out of Texas, did not last a single season. I don't believe he is in the NFL. I believe after he was cut from the Chiefs, he spent a little bit of time with the Broncos, if memory serves me correctly, but not really there anymore. And it's fine to say, okay, well, this is a failure on Brett Veach's behalf. Yeah, I can see that. Defensive tackles wash out in the NFL an awful lot. It is very difficult, Norman-Lott. It is difficult to be 315 pounds in the NFL and play those positions the way that you have to play in order to contribute at that level. So, moving on from that, who is Omarr Norman-Lott? This is from PFF. He has a pass rush grade of 81.6. Pass rush grade of 81.6. Run defense grade of 68.1. So leaves a little bit to be desired there, but the Chiefs have the linebackers to be able to make up for a defensive tackle that is a bit wayward from time to time. Chris Jones has only recently gotten better at defending the run. A true pass set rush grade. So when it's going to be a pass, defense knows it, offense knows it, offense knows the defense knows it. He scores 88.3. Pass rush win rate, 18.9. 18.9 pass rush win rate. Now, limited sample size. Didn't play a whole lot of snaps in college. It's just kind of what Tennessee does. You can't really blame Omarr Norman-Lott for that. So why did he almost end up as a first-round pick? At least, why was he getting... Because he wasn't technically almost a first-round pick. He was selected near the end of the second. But why was he getting all of the hype? Well, explosive, this is from PFF as well, explosive and powerful 3 technique, natural 4-point stance rusher with great leverage off snap, impressive upper body strength to bench press linemen back, can hold up well against double teams, surprising flexibility and bend for an interior player, massive hands, and above average arm length. If you were going to, we'll get into that later, but here is what he looked like on a game-by-game basis. Again, you're looking at a guy who played in the SEC. This is the SEC, about as close to NFL football as you're going to get without playing on Sundays, right? So A 90.9 against Kent State, not all that impressive. A 71.2 and a 76.5 their early season against lesser competition, not all that impressive. Oklahoma has some dogs. A 76.3 against Oklahoma. What would be considered something troubling, a 52.1 versus Arkansas. Arkansas always has very good college offensive linemen. I think it needs to, I would recognize that, right? And then Florida, who always has a good line, a 43.6. However, he did register a sack versus Florida. But this is the game that I want to concentrate on. Alabama scored a 73.3 grade against Alabama. Then kind of the meat of the schedule there with a bunch of SEC competition fell into the 52s, 43s, 56, 58. One thing I will caution here, because I think that it needs to be cautioned, is especially when you're looking at a guy with a limited snap count, that can be a little bit deceiving. The grades themselves can be a little bit deceiving. When you're looking at, I think that the grades sometimes get thrown off because you don't know the exact assignment for the player, right? You don't know what the player was coached into doing all the time. You have a general feel for things, but I do think that sometimes the grading itself can be blown out of proportion, especially if you're looking at a guy who, once again, was getting first-round hype leading into the draft. So why is he grading so poorly against, for example, Ohio State, a 55.1, against Georgia, 58.4? Now, those are really good programs, for one. But two, if you're not playing 60 snaps a game, all it would take would be one or two bad snaps paired with one or two snaps where you were coached into being out of position because it stops something else that other team does. And all of a sudden, 4 snaps later, your grade is looking very, very different. So here is what PFF had to say about the Omarr Norman-Lott selection once it was made by the Kansas City Chiefs. You see this here. Overall, they had Omarr Norman-Lott ranked as the 34th prospect. They had him ranked as the 4th defensive interior. Pick grade, very good. Norman-Lott was arguably the best true pass rushing defensive tackle in this draft class. His 18.9% pass rush win rate led the nation. His 18.9% pass rush win rate led the nation. Twice okay. And his 88.3 true pass set grade, rush grade, ranked above the 95th percentile. Norman-Lott plays with violence and speed and should provide the Chiefs with another pass rushing force to rotate into their lineup. Now, one thing that I just have to observe off the top, Joshua Simmons often credited as being the best pass blocking offensive tackle in this class, health considered, right? Omarr Norman-Lott being considered the best pass rushing defensive interior player in this class. The NFL is a passing league. If you can keep your quarterback clean and you can get their quarterback dirty, you're going to win a lot of games. These two selections, Joshua Simmons and Omarr Norman-Lott, went very far in furthering those two arguments themselves. Your quarterback and their quarterback, but that's not where the Chiefs stopped in this draft. Ashton Gillotte, who we talked about yesterday, actually a very, very interesting defensive, maybe a rush specialist in his rookie season. I think it's possible that's where he ends up going at first, but is going to get after quarterbacks. Then you look at guys like Jalen Royals and Brashard Smith on the offensive side of the ball that are going to help Patrick Mahomes get the football out of his hand. So Jeffrey Bassa very well might be a blitzing linebacker in the NFL. He has the tools, but he's also good at covering tight ends who are a safety blanket for quarterbacks. And then Noel Williams is a press man corner that will stop a quarterback from getting rid of the football very quick. So that's a lot of keep my quarterback clean and get your quarterback dirty for one draft class. But one of the things that I found most intriguing about Omarr Norman-Lott, the night he was drafted, he was on one of these Skype, Zoom, I don't know the technology interviews with a whole bunch of media types. And somebody asked him about his days in college where he worked at a club and he was a bouncer. Omarr Norman-Lott, remembering his time as a bouncer, laughed. Now, I have watched several interviews with Omarr Norman-Lott, not the smiley type, not the crack a joke type, not the type to laugh. What was it, you think, about Omarr Norman-Lott remembering his time as a bouncer that made him laugh? I would imagine, I would dare to interject, that what Omarr Norman-Lott was thinking about in that moment was violence. Omarr Norman-Lott was remembering violence that he was paid to perpetrate, and it made him smile. That's what I want from a defensive tackle. That's all I ask. That's all I ask from a defensive tackle. I want you to enjoy the thought of ruining someone's day. We do have a chart on Omarr Norman-Lott. Pass rush win rate, the higher on this list you are, the better. Run stop rate, the further right on this list you are, the better. There are two players in this draft further to the top right than Omarr Norman-Lott. One, Thor Griffith, who underappreciated in the draft. Number two, Mason Graham, who was not underappreciated in this draft. So if this ends up being the triad of defensive tackles from this class that makes it, we have something to look back on. Now, we talked earlier about that, the three things that you have to do to be a first-round pick. Well, here they are. Here is Omarr Norman-Lott's RAS score. Now, it's not everything because we don't have his statistics here. His statistics, trust me, not particularly compelling. Not a whole lot of sacks. Not a whole lot of tackles. Not a whole lot of forced fumbles. Didn't play a whole lot of snaps. So the production, just not there. What about the other two? Measurables? Well, 6'1" and 7/10 inches is a 3.64 score out of 10. He's on the undersized end of things. 291 pounds, a 3.77 out of 10. However, 10 3/4 inch hands, big hands, and 33 3/4 inch arms, nearly 34-inch arms for a sub 6'2" player. So he does have the hand size and the arm length, but those are tertiary. Those are ancillary to the height and weight metrics. He did not do the bench press, kind of disappointing, but basically 34-inch arms, maybe that was for the best. So those are his measurables. What about the testing scores? Decent vertical, 31.5 inches. Broad jump of 9 foot 5 inches. Those are good numbers. It says great, but we'll just take their word for it. 40-yard dash of 5.15. That is a score of 5.30. Not a great 40-yard dash, but it gets worse from there. The 10-yard split, what you would think would be all important for a pass rusher, especially at the defensive tackle position, a 1.79, which scores 4.93, and then did not do any of the agility tests. So did not have the measurables. We see that right now. Did not have the testing scores. We see that right now. Did not have the production. Omarr Norman-Lott just made a whole lot of offensive linemen look really, really stupid. And here's the thing. that might, it's easy to look at that and say, well, that's not going to translate to the NFL. Well, it translated to the SEC, and that's about as close to the NFL as you can get. But also, he's playing next to Chris Jones. Do you think anyone in the world is going to be double teaming Omarr Norman-Lott while Chris Jones is on the field? I promise you they're not. Any extra bodies outside of Chris Jones will probably be going towards George Karlaftis. If you stop those two, everyone's going to figure you've stopped the Chiefs' pass rush. But Ashton Gillotte, Charles Omenihu, who gets forgotten a lot, and Omarr Norman-Lott definitely have the juice to get after an opposing quarterback. So, guys, that's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not designed, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.